working class rising up. This is the ruling class punching down.
My day bigger your day.
First rule of gladiator school, bro. Don't punch down.
Charging into a goblin.
Hail Trump!
The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within.
Control your own body.
We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
We can fight the entire grinding system. Nobody can. But together, everybody can.
I did nothing wrong.
Hello and welcome to Did Nothing Wrong Live, the show that cuts through the noise and helps you make sense of the chaotic information environment around us. I'm Griff Somke, and with me are Karl Folk and Jay McKenzie. Thanks for tuning in. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. So it really feels like things are speeding up now. And the first thing I want to do is give the Democratic electeds credit, because it feels like over the weekend, at least some of them found their collective spine. The news broke on Friday that Elon Musk was planning to shut down the U.S. Aid Department. Just a quick little crash course on U.S. Aid in case you haven't heard of them. U.S. Aid is an acronym for United States Agency for International Development. They are the agency that focuses on long-term socioeconomic change around the world. They are primarily responsible for delivering civilian foreign aid. When you see U.S. assistance going to, say, for instance, Somalia, that's them. A lot of the civilian aid that has gone to Ukraine to help the people stay alive while they deal with Russia's war of choice comes from U.S. Aid. They have a yearly budget of over $50 billion. And they are responsible for providing at least half the assistance that America provides around the world. These are the good people. Not only are they doing the right thing, but the fact that they exist and do what they do helps America's standing around the world. So, of course, on Friday night, Elon sends a bunch of literal Groyper kids to shut them down and tell everyone that works there that their agency is getting disbanded. Like, guys, we were literally recording an episode talking about how the people that are pulling the levers of power in the government these days are a bunch of Groypers. And sure enough, Elon is sending some of them over to shut down this agency that he doesn't like. And I'm not going to lie, I wasn't terribly optimistic about how this was going to go. The Democrats had deployed some of the most tone-deaf messaging in the week leading up to this. Chuck Schumer was absolutely beclowning himself on Twitter and Blue Sky. Everybody wanted something to be done, but nobody seemed to have any idea as to what. Various groups of people were out protesting, but there wasn't really any cohesion. And one thing we've learned about over the course of history is a bunch of fascist thugs can absolutely ignore a group of people out protesting. Yes. But as I was saying today, the Democrats finally remembered that they were an opposition party. Senator Andy Kim decided to go down there and ask these folks exactly who they thought they were. He was joined by some of his colleagues, including Representative Ilhan Omar from Minnesota, who talked about her personal experience with U.S. aid being one of the main sources of food when she was growing up as a refugee in Somalia.
I lived in a refugee camp for 4 years as a child surviving civil war. It is the essential programs that U.S. aid provided that kept my family and I fed and safe. It is the resources that so many people around the world rely on. And it is our soft power. Oftentimes, people interact with our country through the military. That does not create love for us, and it certainly does not keep us safe. When the world interacts with Americans through programs that provide essential need, they get to see the heart and compassion of the American people. What Trump and Elon and all of their cronies are trying to do is take away the constitutional power of Congress. We get to decide. We have the power of the purse. We get to decide where money is allocated, and it's the executive's power to make sure that that money gets to where it needs to get.
And then it started to snowball a little bit. Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii announced that he was putting a blanket hold on all of Trump's nominees until this situation got fixed. So it seems like they finally realized who they are and what they're supposed to be doing in a circumstance like this, and this is a lot farther than they were on Friday night. I wasn't feeling too good about this, and you guys weren't either. So what do you think we're seeing here? Are we seeing some green shoots of like some actual resistance?
I mean, I think the Democratic Party is, as usual, late to the game, right?
Mhm.
Like, from the time we recorded the last episode to now, this has gone from being like, oh, this is a serious problem, to understanding this is now what appears to be an attempted state capture or a coup, right?
Right.
Like, this is looking more and more like, you know, some kind of digital capture of our internal functions. And so that actually, you know, by Saturday, you know, I think when we talked on Saturday, you know, things were starting to get really people were starting to get kind of concerned in a way that I haven't seen since right after the pandemic, right? Where they were demanding answers, they needed clarity, they needed people to speak for them. And we were really running into a moment where, you know, it looked like the Democrats weren't going to rise to the occasion in any way, shape, or form. They're out of DC, they're in their home districts, they're doing this stuff. Yeah, they had a long weekend to go, you know, talk to their constituents and get out of DC. And, you know, that is a no-no when you're undergoing what appears to be a coup. You don't leave the seat of power.
Right.
That's a different point.
There's books written about that. You know,
don't do that.
That's not a move that you want to do.
Yeah, and I think, you know, by Saturday night it became very clear, like, you know, that's when the first articles really started to hit that this wasn't just some like fluke. There was a very concerted and really well thought through, apparently, methodology to just running in and doing the Twitter creep, right? Where they just roll in, plug in servers, people start getting fired, weird emails start going out, and now it's, you know, oh, we're plugged into your, you know, we're trying to figure out Cobalt so we can read the Treasury files, right? Like we've devolved since we recorded on Friday
one of the 6 people in America that still knows how to run COBOL, and now we're fucked.
Seriously though, right?
I'm not exaggerating that.
You know, and like we're here to the point now on Monday where the Democrats have definitely now been hearing for 72 hours people scream at them that they need some kind of, you know, action. And so, yeah, it's good to see. They're going to have to turn up their response 1,000%, right?
Yeah,
like this stuff going on outside of the tariffs, outside of the actual Trump, you know, damage. This has to kind of be figured out now. And so they've got to get their game face on in a way that hasn't happened. And you know, we're not all going to be able to depend on the Democrats. We've seen that, right? So, like, people are starting to do the thing where you organize outside of a structure, and people are starting to do the hard work of, you know, community organizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really looking at, you know, there are a whole bunch of things community organizers really do. But we're starting to see people talk about roles, not tasks. People are starting to, you know, talk about how we can do certain things and starting to distribute work across systems versus on individuals. So we're starting to see the stuff that is a precursor to actual pushback, and that's good. We need that immediately. Having senators go down, even though they were blocked from going in, is good. These are good first steps, and optically, they're exactly what you have to be doing from now on. And
it became the story today. It became the big news story today because they actually went down and did it, like we were all saying over the weekend that would happen.
Yep. The news needs an incentive, and if people give them one, they're gonna do it. They need them. They want.
They need the spectacle.
You know. They may try and bullshit.
Yeah, well, they need the spectacle, and that's what
people must have something good to read on a Sunday.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, and I think like it's one of those things that I think Democrats have to get their heads around the fact that it does feel a little forced and ridiculous, and like there was essentially kind of like a call to arms. Everybody get down to the U.S. aid offices, and we're gonna hold a press conference. And I think Democrats are kind of instinctively afraid of that it's going to turn into like a Rudy Giuliani situation where he's, you know, called the wrong Four Seasons. Yeah.
Nobody wants to look cringe, you know?
Yeah, nobody wants to look cringe, but like, look, people, they needed to know. Honestly, I don't think they would have done this without the amount of pushback that people were giving them online. I mean, no, and I think they needed to know that if they said, we're going to go down here, we're going to hold a press conference, please show up, they needed to know that people would. And people did, and people absolutely did, and that's great, and that's what we needed. But yeah, Democrats were scared. I mean, they honestly were scared. They're going to look ridiculous. They're going to look cringe. They're going to go out on a limb. Nobody's going to show up. And then, oh shit, I've got Elon Musk and all of Trump's goons after me. And okay, I understand. Like, there's reason to be afraid of that and the power that they wield and what they can do to you. But collectively, Democrats had some common sense. They had some pushback from us and people like us, and they listened, and it worked. And they came out there very forcefully. Don Bayer he opened the press conference. He did really good. There was Ilhan Omar bringing her perspective about what it's like to live in a dictatorship, and that this is how it starts, and that's great. And we had others essentially talking to the fact that Elon Musk is doing China's bidding, which he is. You know, for those who haven't heard of the One Belt, One Road initiative, it is essentially China's attempt to gain influence around the world through investments and soft power. A lot of it is investments in infrastructure, telecommunications, companies like Huawei, and you could also say that TikTok is a part of that plan. But it has been China's effort to get countries on side or invested in China, gaining influence, power, prestige, just money in their country. And Elon Musk shutting down U.S. aid and saying, no, we don't need this. He's called it a scam and a criminal organization and all of these things. And we see guys like Mike Flynn, who have clearly been handed out some of the data showing where this money is going. And Mike Flynn is essentially using it to go ahead and rat fuck the Lutheran Church. I mean, this is where we're at. Like, so pushback is good.
Yeah, no, the pushback is where it needs. I mean, this is right at the beginning stages of something, right?
Yeah.
And like the U.S. population, as much as we're loud, as much as we're kind of assholes, as much as we're really kind of, you know, our own thing, once we start to get wind as a population of something that really starts to spook us, you know, we tend to move. Right. And it doesn't happen quickly, but the Democrats actually seeming to see that there's an outcry, a problem, an outcry, and then, you know, being able to try and message off of that, even if it doesn't look great, all of this, that may be the right road right now for that level of power. Right? Like, because we're going to have, this is something where we're having to think about this at like multiple levels. This isn't just a national politics thing because the impacts are local, right? And so people are going to have to start to manage too that like the pushback that the elected officials do needs to be bolstered by what's happening outside of that. Whether that's people congregating like we saw today at OPM and at other buildings, what's being planned for tomorrow on Tuesday, where people are supposed to go to the Treasury to protest. And, you know, this is, you have to have self-reinforcing tactics, right? Because this is so multi-varied and so multi-leveled. To really affect change, this is going to take us rotating through multiple permutations, multiple thoughts on how we're going to do this, what we need to bring attention to. Because as people learn more, like we said on Friday, as people learn more and as some of this starts to really affect people are going to freak out.
Oh, yeah.
And like this stuff with USAID and like, let's say the Lutheran Church, right? Like with Lutheran Family Services up here in Minnesota, that's a big deal. North Dakota, that's a big deal. South Dakota, that's a big deal. And so, you know, this is where things are going to start to get there's going to be a contradiction for some of these people on MAGA's side where they have to think between two different things. MAGA good, everything else bad. And my life getting harder because they now have said that this thing that helped me or I work for or I work with money from is now gone. And like that's, you know, this is going to start to really, I mean, have effects that they don't understand yet. And we have to be able to capitalize.
Yeah.
And that's going to take a little bit of looking at the situation and saying, look, There's some terrible people on the right and in the Republican Party. There are terrible people in the techno-fascist side of this. But we're going to have to pull in some people. We're going to have to pull in some other views on this to really make it work in the way that we're going to have to actually hold this back or to try and stop it. And this isn't going to happen tomorrow or the next day. This is going to be something where we're going to be doing this for a while here. Things are going to get hectic fast in certain places, but some of the other stuff is going to be happening sideline. Yeah, that's just how this is going to be. There's going to be no one answer.
The way you reach people that otherwise you would never reach, that will never hear you, that will never have any idea about the message that us and people like us are putting out there. There's no possible way, there's no space where what we're saying, right, wrong, logical, illogical, they're just never going to hear it. But if it gets bad enough, if the problems hit them on the ground, which they're going to, and they're going to over the next days and weeks and months and years, and we have to be ready to be like, look, here's what's actually happening, and here's why it's happening. I'm not going to come into it with a, you voted for Trump, fuck you. I'm going to go into it with like, look, this sucks. It sucks for all of us, and let's do something about it together.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, the Democrats have a framing problem, right? And the left especially has a framing problem because the left wants to self-identify as the left. The Democrats are just like, we're going to tell you some shit. Here, look at this textbook we wrote you. And the right's like, here's a simplified version of why aliens actually control 6% of, I mean, it's just this bizarre, thing. So the reality,
that's
the thing.
It's true.
Literally though, right? Like lizard, like you have 3 stories. Right now we have 3 stories, and a couple of them, I mean, they're all wrong, but they're all wrong for different reasons. One's wrong and works because it hijacks people's ability to make sense of stuff and it gives them a simple answer. But the other 2, like the left, who gives a shit? We're not, fuck labeling yourself. Start talking about common sense, common fucking sense. Give people options to get them out of seeing the world through a frame and a narrative that only helps the right. So if you start framing, well, let's talk about how, there are things we can do for each other at a governmental level. Like we could provide you with UBI or these other things. And they don't sound crazy when you talk to someone about, the fact that we should all probably, as citizens of the wealthiest country on the planet at the wealthiest time in history, we should all probably get some money off of that because it's part of who we are and what we've done. Our labor goes into that. You don't have to explain it then in that way, but there's a hell of an argument there. And fuck, Nixon nearly did. Right? Like, this isn't out of the blue stuff. It's common sense. And I think that that's the thing, Tim Walz, Pritzker, all these people that people really are clamoring for at some level. It's not because there's some special sauce. It's because they are just doing what you do, which is having a conversation and saying, this is how you do it. This is right. This is good for people. It makes people's lives better. And you just don't, who gives a shit about the conspiracy theorists who think that, there's cat litter in bathrooms? Who gives a fuck? They're wrong. They're liars. It's bullshit. So talk about some real shit and talk about how those same folks, those trans folks who are being affected by that bullshit, are just as human as Johnny next door who is throwing a football through windows. Like, who gives a shit? It's that's the thing. And like that, I think, is the messaging shift. If we start to see that, that's when, for me, I think we'll start to turn a corner in seeing that we can start to assemble something. But that is going to take a little bit of us doing the fucking work too, of saying, look, this is a shit show.
Yeah.
And you're getting robbed by the same person I'm getting robbed by. And it's not the guy who came across the border. It's the guy who showed up in a limousine to say, look, I'm going to go launch a fucking rocket to Mars. And you paid for it.
Well, and this is where I think that, like, we had some great reporting on the specifics of all of this over the weekend from Wired magazine. They got a hold of the documentation and identities of some of the kids, and I mean that literally because at least one of them was at least 19, that Elon had sent to go and deal with these agencies. And I think that once the pictures of them came out and the story that like, this guy is literally a guy who retweets Nick Fuentes. This guy is a guy who's like big into crypto and worked at Neuralink for 6 months as an intern. And they are trying to like make calls on whether these government agencies should go or stay. And I think people saw that and were like, wait a fucking minute. You know, I'm not letting this 19-year-old look pipsqueak decide these kinds of things. You know, I'm going to call his truant officer to school and say, hey, you know, you got to come get this kid because he's fucking up. And I think people seeing that was very helpful because now they've got a face.
The guy, one of these guys' name is Big
yeah. Big balls. Yeah.
Big balls.
The right has been bigging big balls and the rest of the Doge team up as if they're this superhuman, you know, just imposing structure, these manliest of men, these gods among us who will destroy the debt and bring our government back to freedom. And it's some puny fucking kids. It's some nobodies. The wind is gonna knock them over. They're nothing. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of.
It's so uncomfortable. And I think that's the thing, though, right? Like, Americans, we're a weird bunch for all intents and purposes. And one of the things we do like, and Donald Trump understood this the first time round with his comment about central casting, we have a pretty strict vision socially of what is acceptable to run like high-level offices within the bureaucratic government just because of our culture, right? Like, this is the shit that we've had hammered into us our entire lives here. And like these cultural norms and what we expect and all this. So when you do see a bunch of 19-year-olds who are like wearing board shorts and carrying laptops roll in and be like, look, I'm the biggest dick on the block. You know, most Americans kind of do the like, yo, what the fuck did you just say to me? Like, who?
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing that happens when there's a hostile corporate takeover, right? Where the people who've been at a company for 50 years suddenly have a 21-year-old show up, be like, look, cool, that's great. Go collect your fucking pension or what's left of it. I'm going to play ping pong and smoke weed in my office. Call me later if you need anything. Fuck off. And it's that same shit, right? It's that same mentality. We as a country, that is offensive. There are very few things in this country that are like truly offensive for the American people, not just like subcategories that get very loud. That is one of those ones for a lot of Americans. That is are you fucking kidding me? What is going on here? And so like, I think that's starting to jar people a little bit in a way that even like the tariffs probably wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Right? I've been thinking about what, you know, kind of the whole thought process since Friday night and how, you know, we assumed it might be tariffs, kind of this international moment of like, holy shit, you know, the economic system started to slow down. And it may just be that like, you know, the real catalyst right now is a bunch of people seeing 19 and 20-year-old, you know, kind of bros show up with this non-elected figure who is, you know, tied to Putin, is tied to white supremacists and literal Nazis. Like, people know. And so I think there's this growing revulsion almost, you know, like that's the sense I get is this is deeper than just being like, fuck you, this economically hurt me. This is like, there's a level of revulsion, both at the actors involved, but also the actions they're taking. And that's, I haven't seen that since George Floyd, in all seriousness. I can't think of another moment where people have had this sense of just like disgust. And it's growing. You know, it's not the same like immediate level of, oh my God, this was a murder and this was a fucking blatant. And, you know, like, so it's not quite the same level, but like now that people are getting it, there does seem to be a level of revulsion.
Well, and they got a little scared. I mean, we've got acting U.S. Attorney Ed Martin, whose office just fired all the J6 prosecutors. Yeah. Now he sent this fucking bootlicking letter to Elon Musk about, we are going to prosecute anybody who actually like doxed your people that were there, you know, presumably in response. You tweeted about this earlier saying that.
Excuse me, sir, but fuck off.
Yeah,
like,
seriously. It's
this
like,
is the United States. Fuck off.
You know what?
Sir.
No. And the fact that you even tried this tells us a lot about where your head is at.
I mean, these are Elon's cucks. Let's just call them what they are. They are Elon Musk cucks, and they work for him. They do his bidding. And Elon tweets that whoever the one person on Twitter, one of the account, I don't even remember who it was, but listed these guys' names, the kids, the bros who are working for him. And Elon said it's illegal. So now the acting AG says it's illegal. Like, to list their names. You know, the right has always done this, where if you reveal an anonymous person's name, it's doxing. It's not doxing. You know, if you have, it's not. It just isn't. Like, you know, saying who they are when they don't have any accountability and there's these anonymous people coming in there it's not doxing, but it's also not illegal. And Elon he's been doing this, and everything is, of course, overblown and exaggerated, but like, he keeps calling things legal, illegal, corrupt, not corrupt, that he doesn't even understand, and he doesn't care to understand. He just says things. And now members of the government, his cucks, say, oh, yes, sir, Mr. Elon.
There's a point to that, right? And it's that reason right there. And, you know, Musk is a natural authoritarian, right? Like, I think that's the thing that has really been clarified for me, like, over the last 3 days, is he's a natural authoritarian. He understands how to upend systems so thoroughly that they don't function, and so he can just walk in. And it's clear that he's really practiced that, right? Like, he tested it out on Twitter. He has a pretty good range for how to really just fuck legacy systems up and the people who hold the historic and institutional knowledge. And, like, you know, this guy is dangerous in a way that I don't think most people understood, right? And part of that is because there's been good PR around him, and part of it, he has never had this level of ability, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a whole new world for all of us, including Musk. And, you know, him saying legal, illegal is playing a game. It's seeing what happens, and seeing if people push back, and seeing where the edges and the peripheries of norms are. And I mean, he's penetration testing not just like the government itself, but literally like our society's ability to counter. And, you know, there's a level of optimism to be had. This isn't a done deal, but like, there does need to be a sober realization too. Like, these guys are coming for every goddamn thing they can get. If it's not bolted down, they're taking.
And I think what's important is that we push back on everything that we can possibly push back on until it stops. We don't let them have a win. You know, Brian Schatz saying, we're just going to stall every one of your nominees. It's like, you know, read the Mitch McConnell playbook. He was an expert at this. You know,
that's literally it.
Shit in the Senate.
No.
Yeah. And you know, if they bring it up, if they complain, it's like, we're doing exactly what you did. We're doing exactly what you did. These are the norms, Mitch. This is what you ordered. Eat it.
Again, fuck them. Like, who gives a shit what they say? Like, that's the thing that, like, Democrats, if you really want to win this game right now, shirk off the give a shit gene. Like, don't give a flying fuck about the optics, about the decorum. Who gives a shit, man? You've got a coup. You got a coup going on. Like, I get that you want to seem like the rational choice. You're going to, by virtue of the fact of stop. So just, like, throw that shit out the window. Understand that these are unprecedented times. These aren't market research moments. These are act on your fucking gut. Unless you're Chuck Schumer posting on the internet, then fucking stop. Everyone else, though, try and do some shit and really put your, you know, like, put your big person, adult thinking cap on and say, okay, people are freaking out. There's a way we can stop the freaking out, or at least give it some focus. And that may work for us too, to protect people. Like, there just has to be a shift. This is not the old world.
No,
not at all.
But at least we know we know now that we're in a fight. At least we realize now that, hey, guess what? It's go time.
Well, they're starting to get to a point where they might say that. So that's good, right? And that's the first step. It's all steps. This is just going to be a shit show every step of the way, because no one knows what they're doing, because no one's ever done this.
Whole new world.
Whole new world.
Well, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your support. Remember, everyone mentioned here, did nothing wrong. Bye now.